All right.
Okay, so I think we'll get started. This is Tamara Ledley, and we've just heard from Frank Niepold, who was at the COP21 meeting last week and gave a presentation on the Future Generations Day and the Education Day events that he was involved with in the Youth for Climate campaign. And so today we have Kristen Poppleton from Climate Generation, a Will Seeger Legacy. And she is at COP21 with 10 education ambassadors. These are teachers that represent a very diverse range of subject areas that they teach and grade levels. And they're from a range of states: New York, North Carolina, Georgia, Minnesota, and Colorado. And so, and they've been, my understanding is that they've been blogging into and having webinars into their classrooms in the United States. And so I'm going to turn it over to Kristen to give a more detailed update of what they've been doing and what they are hoping to do. So Kristen, I'll let you introduce the teachers that are with you.
Great, thanks. And Dan, are you going to give me the ability to share my screen too?
I'm going to pass it over to you right now.
Thank you. Perfect. Great. Well, thank you so much for having us on this evening for us at 7 o'clock, but this at noon for you guys. I called into this last week as I was packing my bag to head to COP, and I remember just being so excited listening to Frank and Juliet Varga and I'm forgetting who else was on. Was Jen Crester on last week too? I can't remember, but
yes, that's right.
Yeah, we're on last week talking about their experiences so far and what they were seeing, and it was just really exciting to hear. And so I'm excited now to be here, and hopefully you can hear in my voice not just sleepiness, but also the excitement of what we're here. But I'm here actually with one of our 10 ambassadors. There's a lot going on, so it's hard to wrangle them all. Roy just finished a webcast back to his school in Atlanta, Georgia, his 5th graders. They were so great. They had such great questions. And I'm going to do this kind of backwards because I'm going to let him go. But I'm just going to have him talk a little bit about just his experience and why he's doing this and why he thinks it's important. No pressure, just whatever you want to say about what you've been doing so far for a couple minutes.
What's Roy's last name?
Lander, L-A-N-D-E-R. And I'll let him, he's going to talk now for a little bit.
Okay, great.
All right.
They're nice people.
Thanks, Kristen. I guess they won't fight.
No.
All right, good. So when I found out about the climate generation opportunity to attend COP21, I was thrilled because I've done a lot of climate change work in the past. I am a NASA Endeavor Fellow, and in that work, I took a class on climate change, and my area of expertise ended up being the tundra and permafrost. And then from there, I've actually done some, I was part of the NASA Learn program of NASA for 2 years, where I studied ozone and around Atlanta, and also coral bleaching. So this climate change issue is very near and dear to my heart, obviously, with all that work. And so the opportunity to come to Paris, that was looked at as being such a strong chance for a good climate agreement to be finalized, was just a real interesting opportunity for me, and I wanted to come see how that whole process works. I think I've been a little surprised at how difficult it can be with the number of parties that are involved to come up with an agreement that everybody can live with. I keep going back to, and I'm not a history buff, but I've read some stuff on the founding fathers of the United States, and I remember reading just how intensely the founding fathers argued and talked about the wording of documents for weeks and months on end. And I would compare what we're seeing here to that on some kind of scale. As more and more people realize the effects of climate change, both now and going into the future, more people are coming forward wanting to join the conversation. And while that's great, it also can be make the process of coming up with agreements a little bit more difficult. Certainly, I think at this particular COP, there's a sense that going about this strategy of having countries come in with their commitments in hand has been a big help. A lot of the talk I'm hearing is about wording. For example, I went to a discussion today on the oceans, and one of the things that was on the table is, should we go ahead and push to get the word oceans in a Paris agreement, or should we wait until later when, a few years down the road when other areas have kind of been worked through. The other meeting that I went to today was on social justice, and we got a wide range of viewpoints there. And the indigenous people are also wanting some wording in there for their cause. There was some talk about the word indigenous peoples being used in the preamble, and as opposed to in the body of the document, and what legal impacts that might have. So hearing a lot of discussions about the wordings of the documents at this point.
So Roy, could you talk a little bit about how you're engaging your students back home and what it is you're bringing to them, and how often do you engage them during this time while you're there?
Yeah, so I teach fifth graders at a progressive school, and I teach in large part using kind of a progressive model. I also use a lot of cooperative learning groups, and about 6 weeks before COP started, I started them on an environmental investigation where they were learning, they were trying to investigate what caused a theoretical fish kill, and they started to realize that it wasn't just one problem, it was many problems taken together, whether it was acid rain or erosion or some kind of pollution, that kind of thing. And so we went from there, and then we spent about a week talking about the basics of climate. I actually had my kids use some websites, and they were in charge of teaching each other, so they got a chance to teach the class for small snippets. And so that they're very engaged in it. They're very interested in what's going on. They were kind of curious about, how did you participate, and do people argue a lot, and some of that stuff. When I get back, what we're going to do is we're going to kind of debrief. They've been doing a web quest while I've been gone. I've actually been watching some of the videos of people that I have seen and met. The other day we had a chance to go to a storytelling event at UNESCO that Robert Redford was a part of, and they had 3 people there. They were all indigenous people, and one of them is the climate change poet, and I can't remember what her name is, but she did Kathy something or another. She did a poem called 2 Degrees, and she's become very well known for it. And my kids are actually have been reading her poetry. And the other interesting thing was she's from the Marshall Islands, and so my kids have been watching videos about the Marshall Islands and the effect of climate change on them. So when I get back, we'll be having some discussions to kind of bring everything full circle. So as far as communicating with them, I communicate with them on a daily basis, but the primary way I do that is through my daily blog. They're actually having to read my blog and write reflections on it.
This is Caroline Lewis from the Clio Institute in Miami. General question, is there a sense of optimism, frustration? What's the sense at COP21, especially from the youth point of view, as far as you can tell?
It depends on what time of day you ask them. Mm-hmm. I think in general the mood is optimism. I think the young people here are very passionate. I spoke with a woman that happens to live in Atlanta, which is where I'm from, and she goes to Tennessee State, and she was very enthusiastic and very engaged and wanting to be a part of the process. So I think if I were going to describe the young folks, I would say they want to be a part of the process. They want to be at the table. Yet, you know, when you're young and you're not used to having to negotiate maybe the way this is having to be negotiated, it can be frustrating too. But I think overall the mood's optimistic.
I'm going to go ahead and talk about what we've been doing, if folks, unless anyone has another question.
Are there any questions for Roy? Okay, well, go ahead, Kristen.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Roy. We're just going to go have a break.
Actually, hey, Kristen, this is Frank. I have a quick question for Roy, if you don't mind.
Oh, Frank.
Hey, Frank.
Hey, Roy. The position statements that your students have been working on, for those of you who don't know, a lot of what you've been doing is building position statements with your students. Are there any position statements that, you know, that your students specifically had that stand out in your recollection that you want to share here?
I actually have.
Ironically, the pile of them is behind us on my bed.
Well, so
some of them are like 5-page papers, so I don't know if we'll read one of those. There's some great short ones here.
yeah, so
Well, no, just more like the high level kind of where they're coming from is where I'm getting at.
you know, Frank, the interesting thing with our kids is that they get the overall process, you know, as far as getting into the technical details of the chemistry of ozone and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that, but they do generally get the idea of what climate change is doing. And some of them are worried about the animals in the world. We talked about penguins and polar bears, that kind of thing. So sometimes it works on that. Sometimes they're a little worried about just what their future world is going to look like. And there have been discussions here, and that's come up quite a bit about what kind of world are we going to leave future generations. So you have to be a little careful with the fifth graders and how you teach climate change, because it can be really scary. You know, if they think the world is going to come to an end, that can be really a challenge. So what I try to do is I start in my teaching, I show kids other children around the world that are actively doing something, whether it's getting reusable shopping bags outlawed in their towns, or a boy that has beach poles that monitor in California the sea levels, things like that. So that tends to help calm their nerves a little bit. But they definitely want to be a part of the process.
Thank you, Roy.
You're welcome.
Cool. All right, well, I'm going to let Rick go.
Thanks a lot, Roy.
What's that, Tamara?
I just wanted to thank Roy for sharing with us.
No, you're welcome.
Thanks. I'm sorry I couldn't talk anyone else into it, but
Okay.
most of them are actually still out at the conference right now. See you, Roy. So great. Well, thanks I'm going to just talk a little bit about what we're doing here, and I wanted to start out really with the key premise that we firmly believe, and everyone on this call believes, that educators are critical messengers, and that climate change education, climate literacy is part of the solution. So we're here because we want to elevate that and make people aware that climate change education is part of this, but we're also here because we want teachers to be able to have an experience like this and to be communicators and learners themselves. And I can tell you the last couple of days has just been so, I feel this sense of pride about these teachers that are here. They are so engaged, they are so enthusiastic, and these first two webcasts we had just in the last couple of hours, back to classrooms in the U.S., their students are just so connected themselves and asking these great questions, and so excited to see their teacher here. And so, anyways, can the call-in people?
Please mute your phones if you're not speaking. There's a lot of background noise.
Thanks. So our teachers are from all over the country. We do have 6 from Minnesota, and then New York, North Carolina, Georgia, and Colorado. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what it's like to be here and what they've been doing. I got here last Wednesday with my colleague Janet Brown, the Associate Director. You can see her reflected in the photo there. If you are on the line 7 of the Metro, you're going to see the COP symbol up there, and there's signs of this conference going on all over the city. It's kind of like the Olympics, you know, getting something like this ready in a city. So there we are headed out there. If you have accreditation with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, you can get a certain number of spots allocated to you to enter what is called the blue zone, which is where the official negotiations are going on and things like that. Climate Generation has been accredited for many years. We brought a delegation of youth to Copenhagen. And this year, this is what your badge looks like if you're an observer. There's different colors that represent why you're there. Yellow is observer. There's pink, which means you are a party, someone actually a representative of a country. And there's a couple other colors I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but this is something that's been a useful tool for asking the teachers, and I got this, I can't claim credit, but one of the teachers I have worked with in the past to say, hey, today go up and talk to someone with a pink badge and ask them why they're here and what's important to their country. So it's a nice way of labeling. There's pillars with flags from all the party countries that line the courtyard in front of COP when you come in. They are lit by the energy that is produced by, these are actually wind turbines on this tree, and so that's producing the energy that lights those. And then when you enter, there's a long passageway, which I just recently figured out in Paris. Covered passageways are a historic kind of lovely thing you'll find in Paris, and I'm pretty sure this is kind of what they meant by this. And off of the sides of this are the entrances to different halls, a hall for media, halls with different country centers in them, the hall with all the negotiations, and so there's different halls off there. Here's the U.S. Center. Like I said, there's centers for each of the countries. It's interesting to see kind of the disparity even in countries from that perspective, who has more and who has less. There's places you can power your phone by riding a bike. Kind of cool. These are, as I understand it, Morocco is where COP is next year, and these are animals that have been set up sort of in anticipation. But you see, as you can see, there's people just sitting around everywhere talking in suits and, you know, not in suits in their traditional garb. This is the media center where people are connecting and transmitting back what they're doing. So one of the cool things about this conference is it kind of breaks down barriers as far as who you can talk to, because we're all in here, we're all there for one common cause, and we are all, I think, concerned about this issue. And so this is, no one on this call probably knows who this is. This is the mayor of my hometown. This is Chris Coleman, who is a big climate champion. The city of St. Paul has been doing a lot of great work, but he's here with a contingent of mayors that are working along the Mississippi River. So I would never probably on the streets of St. Paul yell, Mayor Coleman, hey, but I said, hey, Mayor Coleman, and had a nice chat with him just about why he's here and let him know that we're here. This is Senator Al Franken, as well as 2 of our partners from the University of Minnesota, former Senator Alan Anderson and Beth Mercer-Taylor, who's at the University of Minnesota Sustainability. And 10 U.S. senators came to COP a few days ago to show their support for this. So we were able to say hey to Al. You probably recognize Al from Saturday Night Live. He's now in politics, and he does a great job. Ran into Bill McKibben as we were walking down the way. Bill was a speaker at our institute a few years back, so we said hello. I went to a session with Al Gore last week, which was great. He had a lot of hope for the outcome of these, and he continues to have that voice. There's, it sounds like he's doing a lot of work kind of in the background of this, talking to a lot of different countries and representatives there, being one of those voices that's not a politician, so that's cool. James Hansen was walking down the streets there, caught him. And then this guy, of course, I recognize him, ran into him with his great Climate Generation sticker on his water bottle there. So you'll see a lot of great, interesting people. You also meet just really fascinating people. These two guys, we were getting a cup of coffee, and they said, hey, why are you here? We're from the U.S. It looks like you are too. And we heard, for the next 20 minutes, we heard everything, the concerns of the indigenous people that are at COP, their voice for Article 2.2, it's called. They're asking for indigenous rights to be written into the language. They're also asking for a 1.5 degrees, not 2 degrees, to be the goal. And just fascinating conversation, super intelligent and passionate people all over. And this is Janet, our associate director with them. We did a day, Janet and I, where we went around and we interviewed people, asking them why they thought youth voice was important to climate change, and not just youth, but just people. And then we took a picture of them with the Youth for Climate hashtag, which we've been using, and made a short video, which you can find on our website. I'll tell you where to go later. But just once again, just so fun. Such a wide range of people. This woman was from Norway. These two were from French Guiana. The fellow in the bottom right is from the Peruvian Amazon. And then this is Bill Wheel, who's the VP of Sustainability at Facebook. So just a wide variety of voices. COP also, there's themes for each day. So Education Day was one of the days that I was in the Blue Zone, and we heard from a variety of speakers just on the status of education. Frank wrote us a great blog, guest blog, which is posted to our website that I think is pretty deeply into this. I did as well, but his was much more comprehensive, I would say. I encourage you to read that. So that was kind of a summary of the Blue Zone. So then there's also the Green Zone, and the Green Zone is open to anyone in civil society. It's right next to the Blue Zone, so you enter at the same place and then you kind of diverge. There's still very strict security to get in, but it's a much more light space, lots of exhibits. This is where Climate Interactive had a booth. There's also sessions, some high-level sessions as well with different speakers. This is a ribbon tree which has people's hopes for the climate, what they would least want to lose from climate change. So this is a kind of a fun little thing in the middle there. There's, I think Juliet talked about actions last week, but you will often come upon people that are involved in an action, which is a sanctioned event where people are have a voice and can share their stake in this whole issue. And so this was in the middle of the Climate Generations area. These men were voicing the forest rights. And I think they were from East Asia. I forget where these guys were from. So that's kind of the summary of the zone. So our teachers arrived on Saturday, and we started the program Sunday morning. This is all of them. With Ellen Anderson, I showed her before, and Melissa Hortman. Ellen is now the director of the Energy Transition Lab at the University of Minnesota. She's really been the one of the strongest advocates for clean energy in the state of Minnesota, and really was pretty much the author of our energy policy. Melissa Hortman is a state representative also from Minnesota. And they came and just gave the educators a nice overview of international policy, what INDCs were, and where things stood at that point. And here's them all kind of starting things off that first morning. This is at our hostel. They did some get-to-know-yous with each other. No one had met face-to-face yet, so it was a fun opportunity to do that. They were pleasantly surprised to find out that the Huffington Post is asked to post 2 of their blogs they're writing per day. So this is one of them, Philip, finding out that he was published in the Huffington Post. So you can, it's hard to find them. They're pretty buried in there, but the direct links we're tweeting out every day if you're following us on Twitter. And then, so the way that we're doing this is every morning we meet at breakfast to look over the massive amount of opportunities besides the green and the blue zone. So we only have a quota of 2. So 2 of our teachers are going into the blue zone every day. And they're consistent. You probably can tell one of them, Peter in the suit there, he was all get it up to get into the blue zone the first day. And then Becky, who's further down. And the rest of us are going to the green zone, but then there's a number of other things going on in Paris, and I'll kind of talk about what those are. So we go over our schedules, debrief kind of what happened the day before. If people have webcasts that day, plan for those, and then we go off on our way. The first day, kind of to backtrack, on Sunday, we were really lucky to find out about an event at UNESCO that was hosted by Robert Redford and NRDC. And it was 3 storytellers from island nations talking about climate change impacts, really from a storytelling perspective. It was really powerful. You may recognize the woman to the far right. Roy had mentioned her, Kathy, I forget what her last name is, but she wrote the letter to her daughter last year that was read before the UN Climate Summit. She did her newest poem there. It was just amazing. And I have a video of that up in my blog from that day. Once again, you can check it out on our website. But they were all just great stories. So the first day we headed to the conference, all of us together, and just a funny side story of just what happens out here. We got off the bus and this gentleman stopped us and said, "Oh, I love all your red jackets. Where are you all from?" And one of the teachers was telling them they have these bookmarks that have their faces on it and an explanation of the program that they're giving out so people know what they're doing and what they're up to. And he said, "I have to get my picture with you. We have to get my picture with you." So we got our picture with them, and then the young fellow in the suit there to the left, we said, "Oh, and so you're from Mozambique?" And he said, "Yes, we're from Mozambique. This is the president of Mozambique." So you just run into the president of Mozambique, and they insist to have their picture with you. So that's what, yes, no way. So in one of the things that we're doing is offering what we're calling cafe roundtables, and we've set up a list of folks for people to meet with every day. Either in the morning they're coming to our hostel, or we're meeting them up in the climate generation zone. So this is the VP of Sustainability at Best Buy. Best Buy is one of the sponsors of our delegation. They gave us some funding and talking about sustainability and climate change and why they're here. We had the director of the Institute for Agriculture and Trade Policy. We had, we're going to have the leader of the Sustain Us, the young delegation. We are meeting with, let's see, Ken Berlin, who's CEO of Climate Reality one day. Erland, I forget his last name, but he's leading Pole to Paris, which is kind of an expedition. And then a few folks from the private foundation sector as well. So just kind of giving them some broad perspectives and opportunity to learn a little bit more about what's going on. So what else is going on? So besides the green zone, there's, like I said, things going on around. And this I went to today, and I'll tell you, it was just, after being here a week, it's the heaviness of this being here and is getting to us all a little bit, I think. Janet and I especially have been here for a week. And this is especially powerful. So this is an art installation in front of the Pantheon. it's 12 chunks of a Greenland iceberg that were brought here and set in sort of a clockwork formation to symbolize time and left to just melt into the streets of Paris. And there's people aren't smiling in that circle. People are serious in their photos, and it's beautiful. It's really stunning example of a way to raise awareness about something. Another area that's this week being held is called the Climate Action Zone. It's really a People's Climate Summit. It's held in Paris. And today when we went there, we were once again kind of hit by this ice thing. There was an action happening. These men from the Peruvian Andes were carrying a chunk of ice around they're playing Andean music behind them, and it's, as you can tell, it's kind of like being a pallbearers in a funeral to ice. So there's also some kind of interesting sessions and speakers that are happening in this zone as well. As I mentioned, we've had some great speakers. This is Beth Mercer-Taylor and Kate Canoes, both from the University of Minnesota. They spoke with our group this morning about higher ed's involvement and why they are here. And then, I think I'm getting kind of close to the end of my slides here. So this is, so tomorrow we have our highlight, hopefully our highlight of our trip. One of the things that I had asked our teachers to do was Frank had asked about to develop position statements with their students. And we have a curriculum, our citizen climate curriculum kind of leads teachers through a progression of how you could do this. But we really were just asking for students to give their voice as to why they thought this issue was important and what they hoped from the U.S. In response to their hopes and their dreams. So some of the teachers did some pretty in-depth work with them, and the students actually wrote very strong position papers that were cited and had primary sources, and some of the students submitted 5-sentence things that just said, this is important to me because snow is the most important thing in my life, and the thought of not being able to go skiing makes me sad. So there's a wide variety. And so we put them together in this book that you see pictures of here. And tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we will be going to the U.S. Embassy to meet with Dr. John Holdren for 45 minutes to present our position statements to him and just have a nice conversation. And the teachers are really excited about it. I'm really excited about it too. And our hope is that we will be able to have him bring them to the president. And Frank has asked that, I'm remembering Frank, the president holds it and gets us a picture holding the Youth for Climate hashtag. So that's our hope. I'm going to ask him to do it. We'll see if it happens. So that's our big thing tomorrow, and we'll close out the week on Saturday morning. Folks will be flying out. But before then, you can still follow us. All 10 ambassadors are blogging. Janet and I usually blog every night. Sometimes we both don't make it in. And you can sign up to get our digests or just look back at them. If you go to that website, you'll see on the sidebar that opportunity. You can also you'll see webcasts as one of the tabs as well. You can join in on any of the webcasts that the teachers are doing. I'll tell you, they are so sweet and fun to watch. You'll be coming in from a public end of a Google Hangout, so they won't see you, but there is a way for you to ask questions on the sidebar. Those are archived, though, so you can watch them anytime you want as a YouTube. We're pretty active on Twitter and Instagram right now. So if you put in the hashtag COP21 educators or Youth for Climate, some things will pop up. And with that, I'll take any questions that people have.
Thank you very much, Kristen. Are there any questions? I just want to actually, go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you could hear me. Hey, Kristen, make sure you get some photographs of your meeting with the science advisor of the president, please.
No problem. No worries.
I'll also say that I actually appreciate Climate Generation. I did sign up and get their daily digest, and it's been very helpful in keeping up. I'll just say that I really truly appreciate all of you who have been over at COP21. This has been an experience in which I really feel like there is a connection, and it's ongoing through these 2 weeks. So I just wanted to express my appreciation for that.
I should also just give a shout out. We're here, Janet Brown and I are the staff here on the ground, but Katie Siegner is our communications coordinator, and she's writing those summaries every day and editing all 12 blogs and getting that out every day, which is pretty immense. And then we have a staff person, Megan, who's doing these webcasts with the teachers. She's the logistics. So it takes like full-time community, like a full-time group to get this actually to work.
Yes, well, we greatly appreciate it. So one of the things that we heard a little bit last week, and I've heard on some of your digests, is what's going on with respect to the actual negotiations. And I was just wondering if there was any updates on that. I mean, it wasn't until last week that I first heard of the proposal for the 1.5 degrees rather than the 2 degrees. And also the tension between commitments and I guess funding that was, I think it's called the Green Fund, or funding from developed countries for developing countries to help. So that tension in the agreement. Is there you have any updates on how those negotiations are going, or if there are other issues that are rising to the top of the radar screen?
I'm just taping in. I'll give credit to Katie I just was reading this. So this is an article I just pasted in the chat box there. It just came out today that it's saying that the 1.5 degree Celsius target is actually seeming possibly realistic, which is pretty phenomenal, because it's interesting to roll with the roller coaster of the feeling out here, because you're so deeply in this. You feel like everyone's tension, and I will say that there was a lot of negativity probably over the weekend. There was a lot of positive energy in the beginning, and then people were starting to feel like there was too much focus on the minutia. But it's starting to sound like there's some actual real talk about them coming up with 1.5 degrees as their target, which is pretty phenomenal.
Are there other questions? Go ahead.
Go ahead, Frank. One thing that another partner that has been doing a lot of important work in this is the Climate Interactive group, and I'm posting in the scenario called the Ratchet Success Scenario. For those of you who are tracking all the climate science, the RCPs really can't be used as a benchmark because they started with the assumption of 2011. Of when we actually started reducing carbon emissions, and obviously we blew that. So Climate Interactive developed a new scenario to hit between 1.8 and 1. These things are not fixed, but the ratchet scenario you can actually look at and see who would do what and how would we do it and when would we have to get those done. Obviously, the longer we wait, the more the ratchet has to be put on, but it does show the prominence of the 1.5, 1.8 work is still viable. And I think, with youth and all of us actually, we need to know that it is still possible to hit less damaging climate change as a real possibility.
So Frank, when you say it's really viable, do you mean that the technology is there for the cuts to be made so that in the Earth system it will actually only get to 1.5, so what? I guess what is what makes it viable? What are the parameters that make it viable?
Well, there's another thing that happened that you may have caught, which was the mission innovation announcement that happened on Monday the 30th. And there's a lot of interesting discussion about the that was all about we need a technology breakthrough for new batteries, new solar panels, and things of that nature, things that students today would be really working on. But there's a pushback in the community saying that that's not the issue. The issue is deployment of existing technology, not a silver bullet that doesn't exist, innovation that leads to wild scale. And it's really interesting following all that, but the ratchet scenario is, all it has to do is about the forcing. If we actually cut emissions, however you cut them, or reduce them, or suck the carbon up in another way, what could you actually get to less warming? And I think a lot of communities, especially the indigenous communities, they speak very loudly on this, that 2 degrees is a failed target for them. And they want a more ambitious target than that was agreed to with a 2-degree warming target. Did that help?
Yes, I think so. So basically, it's not saying that how we actually remove the carbon. It's more saying that if we cut the carbon by such amount, then getting to 1.5 is possible. Getting below 1.5 is possible.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Are there other questions?
Yeah. Hey, this is Rebecca Anderson. Hi, Kristen.
Hey, Rebecca, how are you?
Hi. So I'm curious about, sort of similar to what Tamara and Frank were just asking about, what's the latest of the talks. And I guess I'm wondering how you're getting your information when you're there. Is there sort of like, a buzz going around, like rumors circulating about what's happening? I'd love to hear about like sort of what's being discussed as possibilities. And then also, like, is it word of mouth that a lot of this is traveling while you're at COP, or are you finding things online that are the best sort of summary articles that you can recommend? Because what I've found is I'm looking for something in between that's not like super wonky, but is still kind of like up to the minute news, and I haven't quite found that sweet spot yet, and that's what I'm curious about.
Yeah. Well, honestly, I mean, the summary that our communication coordinator is writing every day is really helpful to me.
I think that's where I've been getting that information also, is from the Climate Generation Digest.
Okay, that's awesome, thanks.
It's boiled down and like pretty up to it because it's going out right away the next day. Twitter is like, you put hashtag COP21 and that's where I'm finding most of my like big articles that I'm writing. And then once again, going back to like that, I'm getting a coffee and the leader of the indigenous people, oh, look, Katie's on. Katie's here. She's saying there's a New York Times live stream. She's giving us our clue. New York Times live update stream. She's found useful. So there you go. But once again, what's going on right there, it's people that you talk to, or like the constituencies that are like standing outside the negotiating rooms, watching the camera, watching it happening, and then people kind of filter out. So it's sort of different levels.
Another possibility is Climate Interactive gave a webinar back home I listened to last Thursday on the 3rd, and they're doing another one on Thursday the 10th. And they talk about what's actually happening in the negotiations themselves. So you could potentially, you have to register for their webinar, but it's free. Anybody can register.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I love Grist. Grist does some nice, like, pretty frequent. I got 2 today, so they're being pretty frequent about some little things they send out. And then we're members of the Climate Action Network. And those are insider updates that you get, and they send out, I mean, I get like 20 emails a day from them right now because they're all here. And so we're getting that from the different constituencies that are in that network.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Thanks.
So, Kristen, what's the timeline? When will all of these voluntary pledges by the countries be put into the system and come out with, okay, we're at 2.2, and with more work, we can get to 1.5. I mean, is that something that's going to happen in the next few days?
Well, I mean, they're coming out of this, and I guess notoriously cops go, like, it's supposed to be over on Sunday or Saturday, but they notoriously go longer, but supposedly they're saying it's not, but who knows? They go into overtime. There's a word, a special word for it that I hate. I actually can't remember what it is, but so there is something that will come out of this within this week that is, and they're saying they're trying to come up with the word. Is it a pact? It's not an agreement. It's a, but then you're asking, Carolyn, I mean, do we know if one of the things they're trying to figure out here is we have to touch base essentially again sooner than in 5 years to see if things are actually happening, and they're calling that the ratcheting thing. Juliet talked about that more. She knows about that more than I do, but that's a big piece of this. So as far as checking back in to see if something's happening, that's part of this agreement, and then that will be, you know, the next thing.
So can you talk? Go ahead.
So the IPCC had a meeting here in Miami, at the University of Miami, with about 200 people, and the islanders, the Caribbean island folks, were heavily represented, and they were pushing that 1.5, 2.0 is too doomed for them, and it was not well received in the crowd. It was like, well, we can all dream, can't we, kind of thing. And I'm kind of happy that, well, first, are they being heard, these islanders and these indigenous people that are calling for 1.5? It sounds like they are being heard, and they're not being laughed out of town, because from everything I looked at, all the pledges were not going to get us to 2.0. It's going to be over that. But the momentum, I think what people were saying is the momentum will be good, and they will get to their pledges quicker than they think. So we have to ride that momentum to push for under 2.0 and then to 1.5.
Kristen, you mind if I step in on that one?
Oh, please do. I was just going to say, great synopsis. I don't know. Go for it.
So here's one of the other things that I didn't get into last week or at the beginning of this call was the subnational work that's going on around COP in parallel to COP, but not officially part of COP, where the mayors, the governors, the other organizations, the corporations, the nation's national banks, you know, those people, they're not officially part of COP. And what they're doing is, I put a link to something, my brother-in-law is the North American CEO of the Carbon Disclosure Project. And a good friend of mine is the World Bank Climate Change Program lead. And the world they're living is not up in Le Bourget and all the blue zones and green zones and all that stuff, although there. But it's in these other meetings where, you know, the other organizations who really are seeing much more consistent with what we're trying to do action than what you're seeing out of the national organizations and the national negotiations. And I think that, you know, when you talk to those people, they're much more nimble, they're moving much more aggressively, and I think that they're picking up on the 1.5. So I think it's really important to realize there's a much wider segment of actors going on in this space than just the national governments. I'm part of the U.S. government delegation, but, you know, I'm seeing the non-national level group doing really ambitious stuff. So part of what the ratchet scenario is that, you know, this year may be the first year that we actually have economic growth and carbon reductions in 2015. And I think the scenario is just keep on ratcheting up the reduction as robustly as possible with the target to get as much carbon out of the atmosphere as fast as possible. And that's kind of the tone and the hope and the modality that's going on. That's what I'm seeing in the non-national level of conversations. Hopefully that made sense, Caroline.
Yeah. I needed to hear that because I do think those are the engines of what's going to drive the countries. You know, we're going to get it done, but we just have to keep everybody driving in that one direction. And one last question, I promise. If anybody on the phone knows, if our Congress is indeed going to step up, as the news seems to indicate, against Obama's pledges on this.
Kristen, if you don't mind, I'll take this one as well. So what the U.S. position is that we are going to be, we don't want a binding legal treaty to come out of COP, because if we have that, then it'll undermine our ability to actually implement our commitments. However, if we use the green power, the power plan that Administrator McCarthy is implementing with the White House, we'll actually be able to meet our commitments through existing law, existing precedent through the Supreme Court, and as opposed to a new binding treaty that comes out of Paris. Europe really doesn't want that. They want a legally binding commitment, but that's just the way the politics is working in the U.S. right now.
Right.
But that's kind of it's a point of contention in the 194 world. They want a solid commitment. But Secretary Kerry, the President, our administrators are all trying to convince that this is the best way the U.S. can move forward to meet our responsibility.
Great. Thanks for that, Frank.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Hi, Mom. Hello?
Hi, Don.
Oh, sorry. Thought I was muted.
Okay. Well, if there are no other questions, I want to express my appreciation first to Kristen and Roy for sharing their experiences with us today. I also wanted to acknowledge Dan Keys and Aaron Robinson from the Foundation for Earth Science, the Foundation for Earth Science and the ESIP Federation, the Federation of Earth Science Information partners sponsored this WebEx event today, and we really appreciate their help in that.